Welcome to Across the Desk and our podcast partnership series with the Autism Alliance of Canada. Autism Alliance of Canada is a national not-for-profit comprised of over 600 members, including autistic persons, organizational leaders, researchers, policymakers, service providers, and persons with lived experience who are working together for the rights of autistic people and their families. We are here to have that conversation, and the time to have that conversation is now. Hello and welcome to Across the Desk. My name is Elizabeth Plouffe and I am the host of Across the Desk. And I have the pleasure today of chatting away with Whitney Hodgins, who's joining us all the way from, because I'm going to say it wrong.
Brandon, Manitoba.
Brandon, Manitoba. And so we are here on behalf of the Autism Alliance of Canada. And in particular, we are focusing on the recently launched Jim and Jinette Munson Award. And the reason that it's so cool that Brittany, see, this is how we're starting. It's Monday and I have a sore throat. Never going to be good. The reason that Whitney is here is that she was the inaugural recipient of the Jim and Jinette Munson Award. And we're excited to catch up and find out how things have been going. So welcome, Whitney.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we're going to, we just finished fine-tuning something. So we're going to kick off with a land acknowledgement. And one of the cool things about a podcast is that we get to bring different parts of Canada together. So I'm joining you today from Burlington, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. And Whitney's joining us all the way from Manitoba. So we've put a little combined land acknowledgement together. So the land we call Ontario is covered by 46 treaties, agreements, and land purchases, as well as unceded territories. The Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Métis have walked and worked this land, spanning from Lake Ontario to beyond Sudbury for many generations. As settlers, we come with gratitude to this land of Burlington, Ontario, which is rich in history of many First Nations and the Métis. This is a traditional land shared between the Dakota and the Ojibwe. Brandon, Manitoba. Traditional land shared between the Dakota and the Ojibwe, and is the traditional homelands of the Dakota, Anishinaabe, Oji-Cree, Cree, Dene, and Métis people. The Turtle Mountains and Brandon area are also home to many Métis people. The territory that Burlington sits on is mutually covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We all have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions, as well as the land, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that have walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We gather today to share and celebrate the creativity of the autism community and to be an audience of acceptance, caring, positivity, and inclusion. We use the gift of sharing stories to build our community even stronger and find a way to walk along this journey together. So now we're going to talk about Whitney. And Whitney tells me that she's buyout out because you'll find out why shortly. Whitney is in demand as a public speaker and an advocate and an incredible leader for the autism community and the disability community at large. And so we've gone over a little intro. So I'm going to read what was recently written about Whitney, although we've discovered that she gained a year since this was written. So this is a good thing. So my name is Whitney Hodgins. I'm 28 years old and from the Turtle Mountains in Treaty 2 territory. I've been a disability and mental health advocate for the past decade, speaking about autism acceptance and breaking down mental health stigma in our community. I have also served in student politics at the Brandon University Students' Union, where I held the positions of Accessibilities Director and Vice President Internal, as well as Accessibility Commissioner at the Canadian Federation of Students, Manitoba. Recently, I was also a past chairperson of the Manitoba League of Persons with Disabilities, where I fought for vaccine prioritization for vulnerable people across the province. Ultimately, this helped out many in the Brandon-Souris riding gain access to the vaccine if they were at risk should they contract COVID-19. I am also a Brandon University graduate with a bachelor's degree who double majored in anthropology and history. All of my advocacy has been recognized as I am a Future Leader of Manitoba Award recipient, as well as a CBC Manitoba Future 40 finalist for 2020, and the first Jim and Jinette Munson Award winner for 2022. I mean, that's a heck of a bio, young lady.
Yep, I'm currently running out of
Space?
characters. Yeah, character space. It is officially past the 140 140 character mark for a proper tweet. So it's definitely quite large.
I think that's phenomenal. And after learning more about you, and of course, we met previously when you won the award, but now looking more into just how incredibly dedicated you are to using your voice for those who may not be heard, thoroughly understand why you were the winner. What I'm wondering is, after having read a lot about you, when we look at advocacy and how important it is for you, what is it that sort of began your dedication to being an advocate? How did that get going?
So it originally started shortly after I was diagnosed with autism. Um, when I was diagnosed with autism at age 14, it was considered under a different label at the time, which was Asperger's syndrome. Of course, the DSM has improved since then, so now it's amalgamated to autism spectrum disorder. Um, and after diagnosis, I got to experience firsthand just how unprepared the education system was,
Mm-hmm.
employment opportunities were, so many things that people just were not prepared to deal with or handle. Um, and so ultimately it led to me speaking up and being a self-advocate for myself in my educational journey. Um, and that kind of carried with me throughout my high school years until I graduated. I took a bit of a hiatus because I was in between schools, I was in between jobs, so there was a lot of life changes happening. But again, I still experienced issues. I experienced, you know, not having a proper transitional plan between youth and adults when they enter the
Mm-hmm.
workforce and when they enter post-secondary. Like I literally experienced a full year of just, okay, you had all these services, now because you're 18, you aged out of them. Now you start back at square one.
Mm-hmm.
Huge curveball. And so having to go through reapplying for different supports, going through all the intake appointments, all that other stuff, trying to get myself back on my feet, as it were, because instead of graduation, looking at it as a positive milestone, for many, it goes, you graduated, now get out. You've aged out
Yes.
of the system. So it goes from a very positive thing to a very negative thing very quickly. Um, and so for me, I experienced that firsthand. And then I managed to get back on my feet, go through some tough mental health battles while I was dealing with those things. And then I got into student politics because I was like, listen, I'm not the only one. I can probably help others navigate this journey. And then, believe it or not, I was sitting in legislature. For those who know me, they know that I sit in legislature mostly to tell politicians what they're doing is bad.
Or could
um,
be improved.
or could be improved. So for those who know me in that space, they know that I come with literally every ounce of passion I can give you. Does it mean that some politicians will get probably Mjolnir from Thor hammered upon them? Possibly. Uh, so it depends what side of the fence you're on. But a lot of politicians respect me for what I have to say. Um, and in that space, I was in legislature. I was actually about to step up to take the podium to speak against a bill in Manitoba, which was Bill 31. It was a bill that was going to raise tuition by 5% plus inflation and create a further and bigger gap for people living with disabilities from accessing post secondary education if our tuition was to increase.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as everyone knows, people living with disabilities ultimately pay more for their post secondary education than anyone else because we have to pay for our supports, we have to pay for our specialized textbooks and software, we have to pay for literally all of that out of our pocket, which is an additional expense above and beyond post secondary.
Mm-hmm.
So add all those things together, and it just created a bigger divide essentially. And I actually got a text message from one of my family members saying that my nephew was on the autism spectrum just like I was, and he was diagnosed that day.
Wow.
If that was not a big wake up call and a hit with a Mack truck, I don't know what is.
I'll go back to the Mjolnir because I'm a Marvel fan. So when you're, if you're going to reference Mjolnir and Thor, I'm a happy chappy.
Yeah, so that was the wake up call, the spark, as it were.
Yeah.
So it went from me realizing right before I walked up, like, not my greatest speech. You can look at it in the hands art. I was fumbling all over myself. Uh, People could tell my focus wasn't there. It was somewhere else. It was with my family in that moment. Um, but it made me wake up and realize that, okay, you've done all this work. You need to be doing more because there's someone else behind the scenes that needs that
Mhm.
strength right now. And so it evolved my advocacy from being just strictly a self advocate to kind of fumbling around going, I can help people, but I don't know concretely how to help people, to now, well, I know how to help people.
Yeah. But that's
And
what
that's kind
leadership
of,
is, right? Is
yeah.
recognizing that your voice can make change happen. And even though you may stumble, and even though it might be uncomfortable, and even though people might get annoyed because you're pointing out that things are not necessarily the way they could be, you do it anyway.
Mhm.
And that sort of leads us into like the next part of the conversation is that this whole award, the Jim and Jinette Munson Award, was around leadership and everything that you're doing. Would you say that you see yourself as a leader? Like, has that perception maybe changed from the beginning to now?
So I feel like all the way along, I have evolved over time. So, for context, when I won the Future Leader of Manitoba Award, it was before the pandemic. And so it was a big gala and very overwhelming because it was in the Fort Garry Hotel, which is a beautiful venue, by the way, if people get an opportunity to go. Huge chandeliers, the whole 9 yards. I was surrounded by all these community leaders, and I felt out of place. Felt like at the time I didn't belong. Here I was
Yeah.
with my little, knit sweater and trying to look professional. And here's all these people with black suits, like they're from Men in Black. It was really intimidating to be in
Yeah.
that space. And then I won the CBC Future 40 Finalist Award. And I was like, okay, so maybe I'm actually doing something right here. Um, and then to win the Jim and Jinette Munson Autism Leadership Award was just like the cherry on top. It was
Yeah.
the capstone. Um, because all the way along with each of those three awards, I could see myself evolving into the leader that I needed to be. So, Future Leader of Manitoba Award winner, yeah, there's a good reason it's called Future Leader of Manitoba because I was a future leader in that space. I wasn't even in the headspace to confidently say I was a leader. But by the time Jim and Jinette Munson Autism Leadership Award came around, I had been through 2 years of a pandemic. I had been through fighting with government officials, with bill after bill after bill, had some successes, had some failures. And at the end of the day, when I look at it, I go, yeah, I am for sure solidified my place as a leader. And here's all the things that I did to get there. And to be honest, it came with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears at the end of the day. And a lot of people don't know how much personal sacrifice goes into leadership.
Hmm.
Um, because there are many times where I spend holidays away from my family, or I spend, important milestones away from my family because the government decided to pull a fast one on us and I have to be there in a committee hearing, you know, those kinds of things happen. But if you're that dedicated to your work, you're going to make it happen because people depend on you. You get to a level in your advocacy and you get to be a leader, people depend on you to be there. And if you aren't there, then they
Their voice
kind of
doesn't
start
get heard.
freaking out because yeah, their voice is gone. And so there's a lot of responsibility with leadership, but I think it's also important to note that you must never take your leadership lightly because people, when you become a leader, people look up to you. They look at you as a role model. They look at you as
Inspiration.
the go-to person when they have issues. And so that's probably one of the big things when it comes to leadership, is that you have to be there. Take care of yourself, but you have to be there.
And you need to look for one thing. So my son was diagnosed at 7, and he fell into the DSMV when Asperger's was still a diagnosis. We still use that, and I know it's a divisive term. He's now 24, and a couple of years ago, he was taking his first college course. He's now enrolled to do welding and fabrication, but he completed his visual and creative arts at Sheridan College. And he was really struggling with failure. And that's one thing that leaders really have to embrace, is that not everything is going to work, because that's just the way the world works. And I said, you know what? Your dad and I are never going to get mad at you for failing. And he was like, why? And I said, because you're trying. Imagine going through life and never feeling that way. And he said, oh, no, that would be great. And I said, no, Thomas. I said, that means you're not trying. That means you're not putting yourself out there and creating new skills and creating new opportunities. I said, there's many things that you can control about failure, but the main one is how you feel about it, how many times you do it, and what do you do to fix it so that it doesn't happen again for the same reason. But that's absolutely what you're saying, is the failure part, I think, is what holds people back. And that being, because you need to also be willing to be seen. You need to be willing to be heard, and you need to be willing to lend your voice in some really uncomfortable situations. I mean, I don't know that you'd catch me on the floor in the legislature, because I would lose my temper and that would not be positive for anybody. So my applause, because I don't know that I would have the strength of character to do that. And I don't have the political acumen to navigate bills and the different things. So, I mean, amazing. When we look at that and that journey that you've been on and that evolution you've had as a leader, out of all of the things that you've accomplished, and it's quite an extensive list, and you also wrote a book, which is really cool. I did go look it up, but I can't get my hands on it right now.
I was a co-author of a book, didn't completely write it myself, but I was
You
part of it.
contributed. Yep. But which is neat, because it gives that first person perspective, which we're going to touch on later. And so some of the other things, if we look at the list, I have to go through an extensive list, because Whitney has been busy. Let's pull it up, shall we? So a lot of it has been around the accessibilities with the Brandon University Students Union. And then back to the legislature conversation, I ran across an amazing article when you were running for NDP.
Yeah, and that is part of my history.
That is it's a cool part of your story. And one thing that really resonated with me was that you got asked, what is your greatest strength and what is your greatest weakness? And we touched on that before, and it's something that I completely admire, is that you say you are brutally honest, almost to a flaw. I can't lie to someone to save my life. If I try, I will start smiling, get giggly, and turn red in the face. And one thing that we talked about was, much like your evolution as a leader, you have developed yourself. So I'll back up for a second and say, not masking. That's one thing that people feel they are forced to do, is change who they are, mask who they are as an autistic advocate, and fitting into places like the legislature and what have you. But the interesting thing that you said was that you discovered ways to gauge how honest you needed to be. And you understood your value in your voice, using that honesty to effect change, right? And that has come along with your evolution as a leader as well, which I too struggle with. How honest do you want me to be? And I think it's amazing, because you're now using that to make, we were talking about, could you mention some of the bills that you've been involved with?
Yeah. So I've already mentioned Bill 31. The other one that I was involved with was Bill 33 and 34. They kind of, so for context, they kind of combine together. which is a bit of a different bill, because one addresses the Universities Act of Manitoba, the other one addresses the Colleges Act of Manitoba.
Oh,
So when they make changes that will impact all of them, they combine them together. And so I was speaking strictly to Bill 33, because essentially what it did was it learned from the past lessons of the Ontario government, as it were, with the Student Choice Initiative,
mhm.
and was trying to effectively make it so that the Minister of Education, or in this case, it would have been advancement or some other title, because they last minute switched the ministerial role of Minister of Education only K to 12 and advancement in learning to colleges and universities. Oh yeah, it was a big gong show.
This is why I don't keep up.
I keep up. It's
So
all good.
hats off to you because you keep up.
And so I was following along with the student choice initiative that the Ontario government was doing, because I was worried, much like most students in Manitoba at the time, that it was going to come to Manitoba. And what it ended up doing, because we actually heard from those student unions at the time, what actually happened is that it
Mhm.
stripped those students' unions from being able to collect fees because they were deemed as non-essential. And it stopped them from giving programs like food banks, safe sex supplies, feminine hygiene products, safe spaces for people in the queer community. Like it literally created such animosity between government and student unions that the Ontario student unions took, they gathered together, created a class action lawsuit, and they took the government to court and they won.
Wow.
And so we were really worried in Manitoba that that was going to happen. And effectively, they tried with Bill 33 and 34. What
Yeah.
ended up happening is that so many of us from past union councils and present union councils and faculty associations, we all came out to these legislative committee hearings. It was 2 nights, 6 hours each night. I was one of the last speakers. So I sat through the entirety of it. And essentially what ended up happening is that through the pressure that we had created, we managed to create an amendment so that student associations would be able to continue collecting fees. However, the minister controlled fees that the universities themselves collected and would make that decision. So from an accessibility standpoint, unions and faculty services that campuses provide to
Mhm.
students, they act holistically. So one of them deals with the social issues, while the other one deals with the academic ones. And so for me, speaking at it from a disability standpoint, our biggest fear moving forward, because I was chairperson of MLPD at the time, was that it was going to cut things like accessibility services in our campuses.
Mhm.
So those things that allow students to get accommodations in courses and extra time
We've
on
accessed those
tests.
for my son. When he started at
Yeah,
Sheridan, I set him up with the what was it called? It was called Ask Sheridan. And I was able to get him an advocate, and we were able to apply for a bursary to support assistive technology. He asked to not have accommodations for the first semester. And I pushed for that. So because we need to see how he operates in a post-secondary setting. And I don't want to make assumptions that he needs a huge amount of accommodation. We need to let him try. And then I would rather design with him than design for him and make assumptions. Right. And those were some of the things that came up when we had our post-secondary experience. And to your point, we're just going to move briefly into the policy design, because you're making a really solid case for the importance of co-design and policy and the impact and influence that lived experience can bring to that. Because I am sure the times you have taken that leadership role and stepped up to the podium and given that voice for the autism community and for the mental health community has made an impact in a very positive way for policy design. Like, where have you seen opportunities for co-design that either did end up getting exercised or could have used some influence?
So, um, I'm oftentimes getting consulted on various policies and programs. It's kind of what I do. Since becoming a voice, that's what happens is organizations will seek you out, and they will ask for your input on things.
Yep.
One of the things was the Autism Campus Prep course. It was originally created through the Sunni Family Foundation in Calgary, and it was going virtual for the first time. It went from
Mhm.
completely in person to virtual. And so it not only took the consultation efforts of myself, but also other people living with autism to be able to create this course. Um, so that's a program that uh, also ended up, as a result, being implemented on AID Canada, which is the Autism and Intellectual Disability Exchange Network, AID
Mhm.
Canada. Um, and it uh, through doing that and implementing those co-designing mechanisms, we were able to transform something that was restricted to only the population of people living in Calgary to people living with autism from coast to coast through
Wow.
virtual means. And that was huge. We managed to take a small little program, which was the seed of this organization, because
Mhm.
props to them for creating it. Oh my God, I wish I had that when I entered university. And then implemented us, who had actually been through that, to be able to tell you, yeah, your information's accurate or not, to then turn around, create this important course that so many people can access because of it. And it's completely free. You just have to become a member of AID, create an account, and away you go. And so that has huge impact, not just on current university students, current college students, but also those thinking about going to university and college, those
Yeah.
grade 11 and 12s. So
Who might perceive
it,
barriers that, are
yeah,
more the story they're telling themselves. And I'm sure you mentioned in your one of the articles that I read about you that your high school experience wasn't necessarily positive. And my son's wasn't either. So I, commiserate with you on that. Not from a personal perspective, but being the parent supporting him through that. And he ran into some of the same walls that you did, where there was no transition plan between high school and post secondary, and no input from him either on what that looked like. He was supposed to go for an entire final year, but because we had kept him in summer classes just to keep the academic mindset going, and he did get breaks, but it was better for him from a routine perspective. So we had not planned. They had not approached us about any post-secondary planning. They had not created a transition plan, nothing. We got a phone call in October. So by the way, Thomas is done in December. We had not applied for college. We had not made any kind of plan, nothing. And I said, well, that sounds like more of a you problem than a me problem. And then, what do you mean? Like, we have no plan in place. I can't pull something together in 6 weeks and start doing this when we haven't done this all along. And you haven't talked to my son about what he wants to do and where his comfort. You can't just make an arbitrary decision because it's good for you. And he
mhm,
ended up staying until June. And eventually we got around to it. But without voices like yours on policy and program creation, the changes that need to happen for students like you and like my son and like thousands out there who are either flying under the radar and not receiving the services that they need because they either don't want to be identified or they're not accessible or whatever that looks like. Without you bringing light to that, we wouldn't have some of the change that we have now because of you, which is
yeah,
pretty incredible.
it is. Because I know when I first started this, a lot of people go, well, things have gotten better. And it's like, yes, but it's because of our voices that it
Yeah.
got better. Because had we not been out there putting effectively a target on our back, because in the beginning, there are people who are not going to agree with you. They're not
Yep.
going to agree with your vision. They're not going to care that you care about this group over here because
They're going to
it's not,
discount your lived experience for whatever reason.
yeah.
I mean,
And
I don't
so,
understand that.
and, I faced attitudinal barriers along with my high school experience.
Mhm.
So I graduated with a double major. Update since then, I went back to school, so I'm going for
I
another
saw that.
program. So it's when I was in high school, the attitudinal barrier was, Whitney, have a bit more realistic expectations for yourself.
Oh, jeepers.
Whitney, what do you plan on doing in 5 years, 10 years? I don't know. Who the heck thinks that far ahead?
I don't, I don't, I, newsflash,
It's
I don't either.
and so I actually ended up not finishing early, because I lived in a rural. So I started my high school experience in a city. We
Mhm.
then moved because my family changed. The family
Yeah,
dynamic changed. So we moved to rural Manitoba, where the resources were even less than the urban ones.
yeah,
And so we went from having all the resources in the world, having a child treatment center next door to my high school. Like, it was great. Go to rural Manitoba. Oh, now you have to travel an hour this way to see your caseworker
yeah,
if they can't get to you.
yeah.
And if they can't get to you, well, I guess you're waiting another month till they can. And so it was incredibly frustrating from that standpoint, but then having to turn around and get basically told, well, just have a bit more realistic expectations for yourself.
I'm glad you didn't listen. Like, I'm really
Oh my
impressed that you
gosh.
didn't listen because we had the exact same experience where a guidance counselor essentially took college away from my son because of their perception, because they didn't listen. They didn't have a conversation with us. They did not onboard the information. They made up their mind that my son needed to be in a certain level academically in high school. And within a month, the teacher that was teaching that class, because she said, realistic expectations. I don't think college is in the cards for Thomas. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have testing that proves otherwise. I don't know where you're coming from. Within a month and a half, the teacher that was teaching that course called a meeting and said, get him out of my class. I don't know who put him here, looking at her pointedly, but get him up to academic. He doesn't need to be here, which is why he's now going to college for the second time. And
Yeah.
that's your influence on policy, and that the importance of co-design when it comes to program and policy and influence is so critical. And thank you for persevering and understanding that that is part of being a leader. And that is, would you call it a perk? So since, winning the Jim and Jinette Munson Award, would you say that the opportunities to be involved in policy and co-design have increased, or more opportunities in that capacity? Or
I would say certainly more national opportunities have presented themselves. So I have my time split outside of my day job because that's important too. But I have my time split between provincial activities and national ones. It
Mhm.
used to be strictly provincial. And then people were like, well, we want you to sit on this national committee here. We want you to sit on this national committee there. And then the Jim and Jeanette Munson Autism Leadership Award came around. And believe it or not, like, I hate to be a plug here, but I've played a part in the very first National Autism Conference that's happening literally tomorrow. So if you haven't registered, please
Oh,
do. Oh
I did not
yes,
know.
you better get registering right now, Elizabeth.
I will.
Um,
I'm actually giving a talk
because
tomorrow myself on autism and advanced manufacturing and trades and the
nice.
career opportunities, yeah, to the National Research Council and IREP. So using my voice to do what I can to create career opportunities, but I will look and I will try and get on when I can. That's amazing. Well done.
Yeah,
Who's that with?
so that is so it's being hosted by the Public Health Agency of Canada,
Oh,
and
I
it's
saw that notice.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, in conjunction with the government of Canada. So that is a huge, absolutely huge opportunity for people in the autism community, because this is also in conjunction. Sorry to be informational here. This
No,
is
do it.
also in conjunction with Bill C-203, which was the bill that is asking the federal government to create a national framework for people living with autism and their families. So this
Yep.
comes from short-term, long-term, medium-term types of solutions that for so long we have gone without.
Yeah.
And so this conference is one of those things, I guess.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you. I'm going to quick interrupt. So the Public Health Agency of Canada is the leading development of national autism strategy and continues to engage with Indigenous peoples, provinces, and territories through a variety of mechanisms. PHAC is organizing a national conference in fall 2022. So as Whitney mentioned, it's November 15th and 16th. It is virtual. You can register online. So to bring together the views of autistic Canadians, their families and caregivers, advocates, provinces, territories, and Indigenous peoples. Discussions, collaboration, and knowledge sharing at this conference, along with the work done by the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences and other stakeholders and organizations that PHAC is collaborating with, long sentence, will be used to solidify priorities and inform the development of a national autism strategy. Now, so my first thought is, how does this differ from the national autism strategy that the Autism Alliance of Canada has been working on diligently? Or is this in conjunction?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I've been trying to find information and cross compare them. But
Yeah,
if you talk about the Canadian Health Sciences Academy, um, they created a massive report, and I was
yes,
part of those initial consultations with them as well, speaking from Manitoba about some of the issues that we were having. Um, it's really great that in their report, autism acceptance made page number 2 in their summary report. So
well
I
done.
was super happy about that. Yep. But a lot of this is coming off of this legislation, and a lot of it is coming off of all these groups demanding that change.
Mhm.
Um, and then also advocates and activists like myself that are also, we're either part of those groups or we're kind of floating around those groups and we're all saying the same
Influencing.
thing.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be interesting how that evolves with the Canadian Alliance, um, or the
Autism Alliance of
Canadian
Canada.
the Canadian Autism Alliance, or the Autism Alliance of Canada. Sorry.
Yes.
Um,
Which is a relatively new name change, just to give context that the Autism Alliance of Canada within the last 6 months. So that's why we've actually done quite well.
right.
Has recently made the name change. I have been involved with the Autism Alliance of Canada since 2017, 2018, and have been involved with the development and delivery of the CALS, the Canadian Autism Leadership Summit, which is coming up. And that's one of the reasons that Whitney and I are talking. And I was very happy to attend twice in person and then support the 2 virtual CALs that we delivered. And then it's back in person coming in April 17th to 19th, and it's going to be in person in Ottawa. You can visit the autismalliance.ca website for those details. But to tie back to what Whitney and I are chatting about today, we've been covering a variety of topics, not only about Whitney's journey on becoming a very strong advocate and leader, which, while combined, are 2 different things. You can be an advocate and you can advocate for yourself or advocate for those around you, but taking initiative when you see something needs your input or needs to be changed, and taking that risk, because as Whitney pointed out, there is risk in putting yourself in the public spotlight, but sometimes in the best way possible. So the risk can be putting yourself in front of people who will disagree with you. And I think if you walk in understanding that that's likely, it's more manageable. And the risk is also becoming a Canadian celebrity, if I may use that word. In that, Whitney is now a cross-Canada advocate and passionate about it and informed about it, and takes the time to stay up to date on not only what's happening in Manitoba, what's happening across Canada, and how that all links together, and giving people a voice who maybe aren't there yet on their journey, but will be. It's that one step at a time. It's Whitney making it through high school, which is kind of cruddy for a lot of people in a variety of ways. But I think that whole layer of, having an autism diagnosis and dealing with parental splits and dealing with mental health issues that can be subsequent to all of that. It's understanding about the power in asking for help. It's understanding in the power of your voice and lending it in whatever way can work for you. It's getting in touch with organizations like the Sineve Family Foundation, if that's local to you. Although, as Whitney pointed out, stuff's available across Canada. There's Employment Works. There's all kinds of great stuff through Sineve. And then it's organizations like the Autism Alliance of Canada who are working very hard to bring organizations like PHAC, Sineve, and, all of the big political players. What I love about the summit is that it is an opportunity for so many voices to come together and for folks with lived experience to share their stories. My company is called Spiro Careers Canada, and it's named that because of a speaker at the CALs that I went to. And that speaker, towards the end of, I think it was day 2 or day 3, got up and shared their personal statement. And they said, all we want is hope. Hope that people will help us, hope that people will advocate for us, hope that we can have jobs, with all these things. And so Spiro is Latin for hope. And it was based off of that person's talk. And I went to them the next year. I wasn't able to connect with them at that time, and I hadn't made the full decision yet. But that's the impact of getting involved. That's the impact of coming to the Leadership Summit. That is the impact of becoming a leader in whatever way you can within your community and becoming a voice. And if not for yourself, if here's an odd thing. If standing up for yourself seems too hard and too weird and too distressing, what about standing up for others? Because sometimes standing up for ourselves can be a challenge. But when we see it through the lens of lifting others with us, it can make it easier to take that step. And knowing that you have champions like Whitney who spend the time and energy, and thank you for saying yes. Thank you for every time somebody has reached out and invited you to be a part of a panel or co-design a policy or share your expertise and experience. Without your yes, we don't get to yeses for other people.
Absolutely not.
Huge.
Like, I actually was reached out to by an individual today because someone in the community told them, you need to go talk to Whitney. Whitney can help you. And I was like, oh, this is a weird, like, I don't recognize this person at all. They're from the community. I won't name names because identity is important.
Yeah.
But they then later did exactly what you did, Elizabeth. They stalked me online, which not the first time actually. My employees did that to me too after I became site supervisor. They're like, I wonder what Whitney's like. And then they Google and went, oh my God. And so,
she's everywhere.
Yeah, they're like, so when were you going to tell us that you're a quasi celebrity? And I was like, never.
But you know what? Leaders don't do that. Leaders don't do it for recognition. Leaders don't do it for the quasi celebrity. That comes with it. And to your point earlier, that because of that, because somebody recognized that and nominated you, now your voice is going further because you have built the skills and the resilience and the passion for what you're doing, which leads us to the next point that we have to quickly cover.
Woohoo.
So I know you're like, yay, more talking. So we're here today discussing the Jim and Jinette Munson Award, the Autism Leadership Award in particular. And I'm just going to do a quick read from the website. In recognition of the unflagging determination and leadership shown by Jim and Jinette Munson, and Jim Munson is a retired senator who did the Pay Now, Pay Later report 12 years ago, which sort of birthed CASDA, which is now the Autism Alliance of Canada.
Which the leadership, the Autism Alliance of Canada.
Yep, we got it right. Shown by Jim and Jinette Munson in the pursuit of a better Canada for autistic persons, their families, and communities. Autism Alliance of Canada created the Jim and Jinette Munson Autism Leadership Award. This annual award is presented to someone living in Canada who has demonstrated the leadership, determination, and values that reflect Jim and Jinette's commitment to the creation of a national autism strategy. Nominees of this award embody the following attributes in their contributions to the autism sector in Canada. So go, Whitney. Vision, as exemplified by a broad perspective on autism in Canada. Collaboration, as demonstrated by genuine and inclusive teamwork with a commitment to promoting engagement with autistic people in Canada and government. Acceptance, as shown by an understanding of the lives of autistic people living in Canada and their families. Openness to other perspectives, as demonstrated by big picture thinking and the use of evidence as essential to decision making. Personal strength and integrity, as displayed by the personal attributes of tenacity, persistence, and above all, kindness. Track record of action and impact, as demonstrated by a record of contributions that advance the goal of a better Canada for autistic people across the country. Well, didn't you tick a lot of boxes, young lady? Well done, you.
Yep.
The call for nominations for the second annual Jim and Jinette Munson Autism Leadership Award is now open. So please visit the autismalliance.ca website, and then you can go to the section on the Canadian Autism Leadership Summit, and you will see the drop down for the Munson Award, because it is time to submit nominations. It is time to find your Whitney in your area, because this is open to all people across Canada. If you follow the application form and what that looks like, but please get it in soon, because the deadline is December 12th. Now, that's 4 weeks away. So you have time, but you should do it now, because what we have discovered is that people will say, I will do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes December 11th, and then it becomes December 13th. And then you've missed the window and you have to wait until next year. And I don't get to interview you when you win.
Also, Whitney's very bored and very lonely, just being the only one. I need more people to join me. So come join this one-man circle,
winner's circle,
and make a real circle with all of us. It'd be great.
The cool thing about it is, as Whitney has mentioned, is not only does it bring a spotlight to your particular area of Canada, wherever you are nominated from, but it allows you to then add your voice to the conversation that needs to happen across Canada. And that conversation should not be happening, especially around policies and procedures that impact autistic individuals, shouldn't be happening without you. You know that nothing about us without us absolutely applies. And we've discovered the power in policy that has been influenced by the people who will be impacted by it. And a friend of mine mentioned, they are an autistic individual. It's not enough to create a seat at the table. You have to issue an invitation and make people feel welcome in the conversation. And this is a way to do that.
Absolutely.
So on that note, with conversation, the other piece that we do need to chat quickly about, because I have to go back up to here, is the summit that's coming up. And it is going to be in person, although my understanding is that there's going to be a virtual component as well. I'm going to try and do a hybrid event. It's still in the works, so please don't get mad if that's not the situation. But take a look at it. It's not a far travel if you're coming from outside. There is support if you get in touch with the Autism Alliance of Canada, and travel is a barrier for you. I have made some incredible connections by attending. And though my son is autistic, his is the only story and the only voice I was really exposed to before joining the Autism Alliance of Canada, because that was where my focus was. He was the one that I needed to advocate for and to show how to be a leader and to, support him through trying and failure and succeeding and everything else. And now I really understand the diversity within the spectrum. I have a better understanding, and the opportunities and value that we need to provide to make more of this happen. So now Whitney's just nodding.
I love just giving people the spotlight when it's Like when they're on a roll, I'm like, yes. Like on the inside, I'm like, preach. Speak from your
Testify.
heart. Testify. Because
You know
I
what?
love it when people other than myself do it. And that's probably another quality of leadership that I should touch base on, is that
Yep.
it's not about your ego. And so us leaders, when someone else goes for it, we're like, yes, do it.
And that's what I'm the founder of a technology company that focuses specifically on autism and employment, and not a shameless plug, a little bit, but that passion is because it really boils my corn when there aren't solutions for a community who need them, and nobody's stepping up, and they're trying to make the community fit into existing solutions versus going, hey, maybe just for giggles, we should talk to the individuals who are impacted and design it for them versus squishing them into something that doesn't fit. And I think that's another piece of what the Autism Alliance of Canada is trying to do, and leaders such as yourself are trying to do. We need to create a space where Canada fits autistics, not where autistics have to squeeze into Canada. We need to make those policy design choices in an informed way, and in an intelligent way, and in an open way. As Whitney mentioned, we need to set ego aside. Nobody owns a bill. You don't own that bill. You own the opportunity to bring it to the floor. You own the opportunity to advocate for it, but you owe the individuals it impacts the opportunity to have their voice in it. And that's what we need to focus on. And that's what Whitney's been doing between her positions with the university and taking on the NDP, showing politics what they're doing wrong or could be corrected. It's just fantastic what you're up to. What's next? Is there a
Oh
next?
man.
You've been telling me all about your travel, so there's a next in there somewhere, and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, so I've been on the road, literally on the road, because we are moving towards more in-person events, which is exciting. We've reached that level of the pandemic where we can safely start doing that again. Um,
And the
and
mask
with
warning
it,
just came out, but
eh,
not at this point.
masks are not at this point in Manitoba, but regardless, I'm still that stickler for it.
Good for you.
Mostly because I've actually been one of those people that contracted COVID
Yep, me too.
at, as a result of my job. And tell you what, I wasn't like everyone else on Facebook that said it's just mild. Oh, no, siree. I got kicked hard. So I'm also that person that now, because of it, um, I was very cautious before, but I'm even more cautious now. So when
Yeah,
people see me at in-person events, most of the time I have a mask on, unless I'm at a podium where everyone else is at the back of the
25
room
feet
or
away.
quite a few feet away. And after that, it goes immediately back on. So it's one of
But you're
those
not letting that stop
situations.
you either, which is amazing. But you're managing within context for what works for you, and
Absolutely.
accommodating where you need to and sticking to it where you have to.
Yep. And I've spoken guest lectures at universities as always. Actually, there was a milestone with that one because I've officially talked to 300 psychiatric nursing students in Manitoba.
Wow.
Yeah, that we hit a milestone, 300 psychiatric nursing students. And of those 300, some of them are now actually practicing licensed nurses in the field
Nice.
today. So it is incredibly, like, that's probably the closest thing to like impact I have in a
Oh,
numerical way.
yeah.
That I can actually go, oh, I know how many people I talk to. Because unless I'm sitting on the stage counting every single person, for which would be incredibly awkward,
Yes,
um, I don't actually know how many people I've actually talked to. Probably hundreds, if not thousands already, but I know for
I would
sure
say
at
so
least
based on the stuff I've seen.
and I know that this conference on the 15th and 16th because I want to plug it again because it's so exciting.
Plug
The
away.
National Autism Conference. Um, I know that there's going to be so many people involved with that, both as professionals, as autistic people, as family and caregivers of people living with autism. There's going to be so many people involved. And so that's exciting. And they're all going to be from coast to coast to
The more
coast.
places we put together, so this is, we're going to wrap up with this, in that the more spaces we create to bring voices to the table, the better. There is room for all of this conversation. There is, because every single time it's different, and every single time there's new learning, and every single time new advocates get created and inspired, and new leaders emerge and are inspired. And however many times we can do that, the better life becomes for autistic Canadians who are informing how their life should roll out. We need to continue to move towards a space where organizations like Autism Alliance of Canada and PHAC and everybody are inviting, they're creating that space at the table. And they're making sure that the invitation is loud and clear. So check out the Autism Alliance of Canada. It was autismalliance.ca. For more information about the Jim and Jinette Munson Award, and anybody who came to mind while you were listening to submit, so that Whitney doesn't have to be the sole winner. We need to give her a friend.
I would love my friends to join me.
Yes, and also check out the summit, which again is in person in Ottawa in April. Registration hasn't come out quite yet for that, but it'll be coming soon. And I know from experience that it will be a very dynamic couple of days, and the people that you get to meet, pretty phenomenal. Just like today, you got to meet Whitney Hodgins, and you got to learn a little bit about this amazing woman who is going out there and continuing on your journey to be a leader, an advocate. I don't think it ever stops.
No, it doesn't. I can say from lived experience, it doesn't.
I look forward to seeing what you're going to do next. I'm excited.
Oh, I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe go on a
Prime
vacation.
Minister.
Maybe. Oh, that's stretching it, but
Hey,
maybe.
sometimes we need unrealistic expectations in order to, who knows? There could be a cabinet position. There could be, like, who knows?
You
You
never know.
never say never. Never say never.
Nope.
Thank you for joining me today, Whitney. I really appreciate it, and sharing your experience. Hopefully, I know you will have inspired individuals to take action in some capacity or another. So I appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate it, and we will talk to you soon. And so now Whitney has to say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.